I'll make it short and sweet. In environmental engineering, we are working on a lot of things. We are working on biogas projects, as we have discussed. We are working on water recycling. We are working on a ton of other things, but I'll touch upon another area. So I'll touch upon the cost impacts of climate change. Next, please. All of you should have seen this picture and heard the story. Just kidding. I'm not going to tell you the story, but very few times does a picture, a story fits the topic that you're discussing so well as we have today. Next, please. Keep on going. So climate change, what is climate change? Is it rise in temperature, ability to absorb carbon dioxide, rise in mean sea level? Keep on going. Biodiversity loss, extreme weather, depletion of freshwater resources, increase of vector-borne diseases, economic and social instabilities, all of the above. So now you know why I put the picture in there. Alright, next slide please. Pakistan, climate change published data on cost impact. World Bank report says that climate change causes Pakistan about $3.57 billion annually. Alright, what are the causes? It's higher average temperatures, rise in sea level, glacial retreat, floods, droughts. So you see a couple of very conflicting things in there. You see floods and droughts at the same time. And how could it be? We are not worried about how things happen. What we are seeing is what is the effect, how do we manage things, and how do we move forward. Alright? We don't want to concentrate on glass casser tuta. We want to see how do we pick up the pieces and move on. Next slide please. So none of these factors are in our control, so why bother? Question is Sanuki. Sanuki is a lot of key, because we have to live here and we have to see as to how we proceed and how do we live in this country, in this city, in this town. Next slide please. Exposure to climate change risk. There's a lot of things that that affect us. 23% of Pakistan land area is affected by climate change. 50% of entire population is affected. The crop damage as a result of 2010 flood was about $1 billion. And then you can see the disease. In just 4 months, there were more malaria cases than in the entire year during the flood season. Next slide, please. All right. So what are the future predictions? Now, whether we call this climate change or whether it's just a plain case of overpolluting our planet, the net effect is the same. That these things will keep on happening and there is no escaping that. So whether we use a funny buzzword as climate change or whether we use a simple plain vanilla word as polluting beyond as if there is no tomorrow, the end result is the same. These things are not going away. Next slide please. Published data on cost impacts. This is a report by Director General of Climate Change and Environment, Pakistan Planning and Development Division. And he said that in order to adapt, and Mr. Rapnawaz talked about adaptation, I don't know how many of you picked on that. Adaptation is basically, what do? We know that the flood is going to come. We know that there will be extreme droughts. We know all these things are going to happen. What do we do about it? So that's called adaptation. And what he has said is that if we go with a low, medium, high intensity adaptation effort, this is the amount of money that it's going to cost us as $2 billion, $3 billion, $2, $3, and $4 billion per year, approximately. So where in the world do we get that kind of money in a country like Pakistan? Next slide, please. All right. Okay, I'll just zip through this. Note down just one thing here. In the Mississippi River, there was, just what Dr. Imran also pointed out, there was a flood in 1927 and then there was a flood in 2011. A lot more destruction in 2011 as opposed to 1927. The question is, if you have heard that cliche or proverb or whatever, if a tree fell in a forest, did it make a sound? Now what happened in 1927 was that the tree was in a forest. Now it's in the backyard. So that's the reason you are seeing 2011 destruction is to the level that you are seeing here. Next slide, please. This is the 2000. All the disasters listed in this table happened in 2011. These are not spread over time. This is just 1 year data. Next slide, please. So these, just hang on, please reverse one slide. So you can see that the flood damage in Thailand cost $45 billion. All right, and then you can just keep on going down, and you can see that each event causes anywhere from $2 to $3 billion. Next slide. Next slide. You can see that the flood in Pakistan caused about $2 billion worth of damage in 2011. Next slide. This is a report generated by Munich Reinsurance. It's a German company of insurance, and they are heavy duty into climate change studies. And you think, why is the insurance company क्या कर रही है यार climate change में? ठीक है? Actually, they're doing a lot of things, because insurance company is doing a lot of things because that's where the money is. जहाँ पे भी पैसा involved होता है, वहाँ सब लोगों के एंटीना बिल्कुल alert हो जाते हैं. Right? So this is a lot of money involved in the insurance business, and you can see that they have compiled some data. Next slide. You can see that the number of events, keep on going. Next slide, next slide. You can see that the number of events during the last 20-30 years have gone up, so have the damages, so have the claims, and so have the fatalities. So more than anything else, the fatalities is the number that you should be very careful about and see as to what is the human life and cost involved in these natural disasters. Now these are all natural catastrophes. Next slide. Keep on going. All right. Keep on going. Next slide. I'll go through this. Intangible cost. There is, you can see, internal migration. This is based on Asian Development Bank study report, and they have said in their report that this was generated here in February 2011. This report from ADB, and it is going to be released very shortly. It's still not released yet, but they have put advanced copies on the internet. And what they have said is 38.3 million people were migrated, internal migration, and most of them were a result of natural disasters. This increases conflict, this increases stress on water resources, this increases stress on land resources. And you can see the pictures, and the big picture, the one on the top, is very expressive. The people are going in some kind of a makeshift cart, and this is being pulled by ropes. So you can see that's the kind of pressure that people come in. Next slide. There is a global climate change vulnerability index. This is done by a firm in UK, and they have put 16 countries of the world as the highest risk. Pakistan, as you can see, is one of them. And you can see that, and as a further part of the report, that they are saying climate change risk, whatever those risks are, and I've listed them down, the risk is going to increase and not decrease. So this cost, this effort is going to stay with us. We have to do something about it. This is not going away. Again, keep on going. I read a beautiful article just 2 weeks ago, and this I did right from my desktop because I could access the NED library, and from the NED library I could access the very well-known magazine called Science. And in that, the editor-in-chief, he had some concluding remarks, and he said, and I'll read, regrettably, we live in an age where science denial has become fashionable. Bruce Alberts. So, what happens is that data आके सामने भंगड़ा भी कर रहा हो, लेकिन we just say नहीं कुछ नहीं हो रहा है, सब सही है. This is the culture that we need to avoid. We need to see what the data is telling us and react accordingly. That data is not going to just go away because I managed to put it under the carpet. Debates are purposely misled by well-funded groups. People have their own agendas. They are sometimes very well-funded, and they would shift the focus away from the real issue. Again, there are people political leaders who know things to be correct, but and again, I'm not blaming political leaders. I think we're all in the same boat. We know something is true, but we still don't have the courage to speak up, and this is especially relevant with climate change. What's the remedy for all this? Remedy for all this is to increase science education, increase engineering education, so that the public opinion is not misled as easily as it is done today. Next slide. Finally, we are still living in that story as to what that animal is. But again, extreme weather will cause extreme events. Awareness is the key to the problem. First, at least you should know that I have a problem. And then identification is the root cause for the planning. And if we are prepared, we can mitigate the effects. Thank you very much.